I truly never thought there would come a day when I would sit here and tell this story out loud, a story that still shakes me every time I close my eyes, because even now I can still hear that whisper echoing beside my ear, "You're no longer welcome here." A soft sentence, gentle even, but the way it sliced through me felt like a thin, cold blade. And the worst part? It came from the daughter-in-law I once loved like my own blood. I know, when you hear something like that, you might think, well, she must have done something. No daughter-in-law says that for no reason. I used to ask myself the same thing, over and over, until the question itself became a bruise inside my chest. But let me tell you something. Life is never as simple as people think it is. Some truths are buried beneath years of dust. Some pains grow quietly from the smallest things, and sometimes a person only needs one moment, one sentence, for their true nature to slip through the cracks. I remember the exact day it happened. The sky was turning gray, heavy with the promise of rain. A cold wind seeped through the windows. I still had my old habit, waking up earlier than everyone else to brew a pot of warm tea, leaving it outside in case anyone woke up thirsty. I've kept that habit for more than 30 years, from the day I first married into this family, then became a wife, then a mother, then a mother-in-law. And all those years, I truly believed that if I lived with kindness, patience, and generosity, then the family would naturally stay peaceful. I believed that, right up until the moment my hair turned gray. And then, one cold morning, everything changed. I was standing near the kitchen doorway when I heard my daughter-in-law, Emily, speaking on the phone. Her voice was quiet, almost careful, but one sentence came through crystal clear. "She's not welcome here." My heart skipped. I froze. At first I tried to comfort myself. She must be talking about someone else. She wouldn't mean me. Emily is a sweet girl. She wouldn't say something like that. But just a moment later, she stepped out of the hallway and saw me standing there. Her eyes flickered, just a tiny spark, but enough for me to understand. She knew I heard her, and I knew she meant me. It was a strange moment, a quiet, fragile moment that felt like the air between us had shattered. Look, I'm not the type of person who overthinks things. My whole life, all I ever wanted was harmony. My husband died early, leaving me alone to raise our only son, Daniel. He was everything to me, the center of my world. I gave everything I had. My youth, my health, my sleep, my tears. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, just to make sure he never felt the hunger or fear I felt as a child. I fought for every opportunity he had. I never let him go to bed without dinner. I never let him walk to school without shoes that fit. I never let him carry the burdens I carried. And when he grew up, married, and brought a wife home, I was happy, truly happy. I treated Emily like my own daughter. I never raised my voice with her. I never interfered with her choices. I cooked for them, cleaned for them, helped them whenever I could. Because to me, having family means having everything. That was the belief I built my whole life around. But that belief was shattered the day I heard those words. When Emily saw me standing there, holding the teacup in my shaking hand, she approached with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I asked quietly, "Did I hear something wrong just now?" She paused, just 1 second, but it was enough. Then she said softly, "Mom, I think sometimes it's better if outside people don't get too involved in me and Daniel's personal matters." Outside people. Those 2 words hit me so hard my knees almost gave out. I, the woman who raised Daniel alone, the one who sacrificed everything to build this home, the one who welcomed her with open arms, was suddenly outside people. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My voice trembled when I said, "I am Daniel's mother." She smiled again, a smile that wasn't a smile. "Yes, Mom. You're his mother, but you're not my mother." I felt something collapse inside me, like an entire wall I had built over decades crumbling with one sentence. I had to lean against the counter because my legs wouldn't hold me. And in that moment, all I could think was, she must be upset. She must be stressed. I must have misunderstood. She has never talked like this before. But deep down, I knew. Words like that don't come from nowhere. And I wish I could tell you that was the end of it. But it wasn't. It was only the beginning. Only a few days later, the truth began unraveling, one thread at a time, until the whole fabric of our family started tearing apart. And then, like a knife twisting deeper, I overheard the sentence that nearly made me drop to my knees. "I just need her gone. Once she's out, I can deal with Daniel." Deal with him? Deal with him? How? What was she planning? What did she need me out of the house for? Why was she suddenly so hostile, so cold, so unlike the girl I thought I knew? Fear crept into me slowly, like cold water rising around my feet. And that fear was only the start of everything that followed, because the real story, the real storm, had only just begun. If I had known, if I had just paused long enough to breathe, to listen to my own instincts, maybe I would have understood earlier. But back then, I still believed in the goodness of people, still believed that family could not turn into strangers overnight, still believed Emily's coldness was temporary, a mood, a misunderstanding, stress, anything but what it really was. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself, don't think too much. She's young, maybe overwhelmed. Maybe you're the one being sensitive. But the thing about the truth is, it doesn't disappear just because you look the other way. It grows, quietly, steadily, until one day it stands right in front of you. And that happened sooner than I expected. A few days after that morning, I noticed something strange. It was small, so small that if I weren't already uneasy, I might have ignored it. Daniel was different. He avoided eye contact. He rushed through meals. He left the house earlier than usual and came home later. When I asked, he always said the same thing. "Work is just busy, Mom. Busy. Always busy." I didn't want to doubt him, but the way he spoke, as if he were hiding something behind each word. Then came the second sign. Emily stopped leaving the bedroom door open. Before, she'd always leave it slightly ajar, a habit she never cared about. But now, always closed, always locked. And whenever I walked past, she lowered her voice to a whisper. One evening, I walked down the hallway with a plate of fresh-cut fruit, something I often made for both of them. I stopped just outside their door when I heard, "Don't worry. She'll be gone soon." My hand tightened around the plate so hard I could hear it creak. I froze, completely still. The only thing moving was my breath, shaking, uneven. The voice inside answered, "Are you sure Daniel won't suspect?" Emily laughed softly, the kind of laugh that felt like ice dripping down my neck. "He won't. He listens to me now." Listen to her? Now? Since when? Why did she say it like that? Like control? I pulled myself away before the plate slipped from my fingers. I walked back to the kitchen, put the fruit down, and sat on a chair. For a long time, I didn't move. I didn't blink. I couldn't. I felt something inside me start to tremble. A quiet panic. A warning. Something was wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. The third sign came the next morning. I woke up earlier than usual, maybe because my thoughts were loud, or maybe because mothers always sense storms before they arrive. I walked outside to water the small garden in front of the house. I had planted most of those flowers years ago. They were something I tended lovingly, the way some people tend their memories. But when I stepped outside, my heart dropped. Half the plants had been uprooted, pulled out, thrown aside like trash. I knelt down in the soil, touching the roots with my trembling fingers. Cold, damp, hurt. I didn't even hear Emily walk up behind me until she spoke. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. I'm planning to redesign the garden. Start fresh." Start fresh. With what? By destroying everything I planted? I whispered. "These flowers. I've grown them for years." She shrugged. "They were messy. I want something more modern." My voice cracked. "You could have told me." She turned away, said lightly, "You won't be here long enough to worry about it." My breath caught. A sharp sting shot through my chest. "Emily, what do you mean by that?" She looked over her shoulder, eyes colder than the wind that morning. "It's better if you prepare yourself." Prepare for what? But before I could ask, she walked away, humming like nothing happened. I sat there, staring at the empty patches of soil. Everything felt symbolic, like she wasn't just removing flowers. She was removing me, piece by piece, root by root. The fourth sign was Daniel. That night, he came home late again. He walked into the kitchen, barely touched the food I made, then mumbled, "Mom, can we talk tomorrow? I'm tired." I reached out, gently touching his arm. "Daniel, is everything okay?" He flinched, as if my hand burned him. My heart sank. He forced a smile, the kind of smile that hides something. "No, Mom, I'm just stressed. Work stuff." But I saw it, in his eyes, the way they darted away, the way his shoulders stiffened every time Emily walked past. My son was hiding something, or worse, he was afraid of something. But what? Afraid of who? The question clung to me like a shadow, and then came the sign I couldn't ignore anymore, the one that stopped me cold. I was cleaning the living room when someone knocked on the door. A delivery man handed me a small package. It was addressed to Emily. I didn't open it, of course not. I simply placed it on the table and continued dusting. 20 minutes later, Emily came downstairs. I told her she had a package. Her reaction, my God. She snatched it immediately, held it close to her chest like it was something forbidden, something dangerous. Her eyes flashed with panic. Then she asked sharply, "Did you touch it?" I blinked. "I just moved it from the door to the table." She stared at me, long, tense, studying my face as if trying to see whether I knew something. And then, without saying a word, she rushed upstairs, locking her bedroom door. A minute later, I heard whispering. 10 minutes after that, crying. Then silence, a suffocating silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, what is happening to my family? What is Emily hiding? And why does Daniel seem caught in the middle, like a man drowning? I felt fear, the kind that fills your lungs with cold water. The kind that tells you something is slipping out of your hands, and you are powerless to stop it. My life, my peace, my home, something was happening to all of it, something I couldn't yet name, something creeping closer, and deep down, I felt the story was about to take a turn I wasn't prepared for, a turn that would break me, before it saved me. That night, something inside me refused to rest. I kept turning on my bed, my thoughts running in circles, like a clock with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Every small detail from the past week replayed in my mind. Emily's whisper behind the door. Daniel's distant eyes, the uprooted garden, the panic over that mysterious package. Everything pointed to one truth, but I still didn't know what that truth was. And maybe part of me didn't want to know, because once you see the truth, you can never go back to the comfort of not knowing. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Strange, considering I hardly slept. My body felt tired, but my mind felt strangely sharp. I walked downstairs quietly, hoping for a moment to myself, but I froze halfway down the steps. Daniel and Emily were in the kitchen, whispering again, their voices low, tense. I shouldn't have overheard. I know that. I should have walked away, but something, instinct, fear, fate, kept me still. Emily hissed, "You have to tell her. I can't keep pretending." Daniel's voice was shaky. "It's not the right time." "The right time," she snapped softly. "You promised me." "I know, but she's my mother, and I'm your wife." Her voice cracked, and somehow that hurt even more. Then Emily said something that made my entire body go cold. "If she finds out from someone else instead of from us, everything will collapse." Collapse. That word echoed inside me, over and over and over. What could collapse? My family, my home, my relationship with my son. What secret were they holding? That had the power to destroy everything. I felt my breath shaking, my hands gripping the railing until my knuckles turned white. Then suddenly, the floor creaked beneath me. Both their heads snapped toward the staircase. Daniel's face drained of color. Emily stood completely still, her eyes sharp, calculating. Slowly, I stepped down. "Mom." Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. I walked into the kitchen. The morning light made everything look too bright, too exposed. It felt wrong, as if the world should have dimmed itself for what was coming. "I didn't mean to listen," I said quietly, "but I heard you, both of you." Silence. Daniel looked at Emily, silently begging her, but she crossed her arms and looked away, so I turned to my son. "Daniel, what's going on?" He swallowed hard, his hands trembling against the counter. "Mom, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." Those words alone felt like a countdown, like everything in my life was holding its breath. I whispered, "Tell me what?" Daniel opened his mouth, but Emily stepped forward and interrupted him. "No, let me." She stood in front of me, her back straight, her chin lifted slightly. There was confidence there, or maybe arrogance, but underneath it, something like fear. She exhaled through her nose and said, "Your son has been keeping a secret from you for months." My heart thudded, loud, unsteady. "A secret?" My voice cracked. Emily nodded. Daniel closed his eyes, head bowed in shame. I felt my chest tighten. "What secret?" I asked again, louder this time, though my voice still trembled. And then Emily whispered, "He's been helping someone financially, behind your back." My breath hitched. "Helping? Who?" Emily hesitated, then said, "A woman." The world spun, just slightly, just enough for the window light to flicker in my vision. I leaned on the chair, my voice barely audible. "A woman?" Emily nodded. "A woman from his past." My heart sank. Past? Old relationship? Affair? Debt? What was she saying? I whispered, "Daniel, is this true?" His eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Guilt, fear, regret, something else. "Mom, it's not what she's making it seem like." Emily shot him a sharp look. "Oh, please, just tell her." "Emily, stop," he said quietly, but she didn't. She lifted her chin again, stared directly at me, and said, "He's been sending her money every month, thousands. And he didn't tell you because he knew you'd try to make him stop." "Thousands," every month. The room tilted a little. I had worked my whole life to keep our family afloat. I'd counted coins for rice, skipped meals so my son could have enough. I knew the value of money in a way Emily never had to. And now Daniel was giving it away to another woman. My lips trembled. Daniel. Why? His voice shook. Mom, I swear, it's not an affair. It's not betrayal. She just... Don't lie to her, Emily snapped. He turned sharply. I'm not lying. Then he grabbed my hand, the way he used to when he was little, and whispered, Mom, I was trying to protect you. Protect me? My heart tightened painfully. Protect me from what? He opened his mouth, and again, Emily stepped forward and answered for him. From the truth. That word again. Truth. Like a shadow following me through every room of the house. I looked at both of them. My son, I raised with every piece of strength I had, and the daughter-in-law I welcomed with every piece of love I had left. My voice came out weak. What truth are you hiding? Silence, long, heavy, suffocating. Daniel's lips parted, eyes wet. But once again, Emily spoke first. That woman, she isn't just from his past. Her voice softened, almost too soft. She's connected to you. My heart stopped. Connected to me? Before I could breathe, she whispered the sentence that changed everything. She's connected to your husband. My knees buckled. Daniel reached out just in time to catch me. My husband, I rasped. He's been gone for so many years. Emily nodded. And the woman Daniel has been supporting is the woman he left behind. The room fell completely still. My mouth fell open, but no sound came out. My late husband, another woman, secrets buried for decades, and my son, caught in the middle of a past he never asked for. My entire world tilted. Emily whispered, That woman has a child. My breath hitched violently. Daniel closed his eyes. Emily finished. And the child might be your husband's. I felt my whole body go cold. A cold that didn't touch my skin, but froze my bones. Everything inside me collapsed. The garden, the whispers, the package, the distance, the coldness. All of it suddenly made sense. Too much sense. I stood there, barely breathing. My voice cracked apart as I whispered, Daniel, is it true? His silence was the answer. This was only the first half of the truth, and the second half would be so much worse. When Daniel didn't answer, when he just stood there, eyes glistening, lips trembling, I felt something inside me tear, a tear you don't hear, but you feel deep, sharp, slicing. Silence spread across the kitchen like a thick fog. Emily stepped back, folding her arms, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite understand. Part satisfaction, part fear, part victory. Daniel finally opened his mouth, but no words came out. And that was when I realized the truth. He was hiding something. He had been hiding it for months. And whatever it was bigger than a simple secret. I whispered, my voice barely holding itself together. Daniel, tell me, please. He wiped his face with shaking hands. Then he looked up, and in his eyes, I saw a guilt so deep it seemed to swallow him whole. Mom, his voice cracked. It started a year ago. A year. My heart thudded painfully. I got a call, he continued, from a woman I didn't know. She said she needed to talk about Dad. My vision blurred. I had to grip the edge of the table just to stay upright. He continued, voice fragile. She told me she had known him before he met you, that they had history. History. A simple word that suddenly felt like poison. And she said she never wanted anything from him, Daniel whispered. But after he died, life was hard. Too hard. My breath hitched. Why tell you? Why now? Daniel swallowed. I asked her the same thing, and she said, because of the child. I felt the world tilt again. Her child? I rasped. Daniel nodded. She told me the child was born a few years after Dad left, and that the boy grew up believing his father had abandoned him. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. He asked her all the time, Daniel whispered, tears falling. Why doesn't my father want me? Why doesn't he come back? I closed my eyes. That question, a question from a boy I'd never met, stabbed me with a pain I didn't know how to name. Emily stepped forward, her voice clipped, and she contacted Daniel because she needed money for the boy, for his health. Health. My eyes snapped open. What health? I demanded. Emily hesitated just for a moment. Then, the boy is sick. Everything inside me froze. Not sick like a cold, not sick like a fever, a different kind of sick, a long-term, expensive, frightening kind. Daniel spoke softly, voice trembling so badly it barely sounded like him. He has a heart condition, Mom, a serious one. He needs treatment, surgeries, medications, and she couldn't afford any of it. My hand flew to my mouth. Tears blurred everything. So I helped, Daniel whispered. I didn't know if he was really Dad's son, but when I saw his medical files, when I heard his voice, I couldn't turn my back. He inhaled shakily. Mom, he's just a boy who thinks his father left him on purpose. My heart cracked completely. A child, a sick child, a child who grew up in the shadow of a lie, a child who never chose any of this. And suddenly, all my anger, all my confusion, all my hurt shifted, not disappearing, but transforming into something deeper, heavier, more unbearable. Pain, real, raw pain, not just for myself, but for that boy. But then, another truth began surfacing, something darker, because if this was all, Emily wouldn't have acted the way she did. She wouldn't have tried to push me out. She wouldn't have been afraid of that package. She wouldn't have whispered, once she's gone, I can deal with Daniel. No, something more was hidden there, and I needed to know what it was. So I turned to Emily. Why did you want me gone? My voice was tired, thin, but steady. Emily's lips tightened. Daniel glanced at her. Emily, no. She raised her chin. She deserves to know. Her voice grew cold. You needed to leave because you're the reason Daniel didn't tell her the truth. I blinked. What? Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. Emily leaned in, her words like ice. He didn't want to break your heart. I froze. Break my heart. As if it wasn't already shattering. Emily continued. He thought if you found out your husband had a child outside your marriage, it would destroy you. Her voice lowered, almost cruelly soft. So he wanted you gone, not gone forever, just out of the house, so he could deal with it without having to see you fall apart. Daniel shouted, Emily, enough. But she didn't stop. She looked straight into my eyes. Your son was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect our marriage, and that woman was trying to protect her son. Her next words felt like a slap. And somewhere in all of that, you became the obstacle. Obstacle. Me. A woman who sacrificed everything. A woman who survived loneliness, grief, and widowhood. A woman who raised Daniel alone. A woman who poured her whole life into this family. And I became the problem. My voice cracked as I whispered, so you both decided to keep me in the dark. Daniel burst into tears. Mom, I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to know Dad. Dad wasn't who we thought he was. I felt tears running down my face. My whole life, I whispered, my entire marriage was a lie. Daniel shook his head violently. No, Mom, Dad loved you. Emily cut in sharply. Love? He left another woman pregnant while married to her. Daniel turned to her, furious. Stop twisting it. But Emily stepped back, her voice colder than ever. Truth doesn't need twisting. She gestured toward me. Look at her. Look at what hiding it has done already. Daniel turned back, seeing me sway on my feet. He reached out, voice breaking. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Daniel, tell me everything, all of it. He hesitated. Then he finally said the words that shattered whatever was left of my world. Mom, there's more. My breath caught. More than the affair, more than the secret child, more than the lies. Daniel's voice shook so hard it barely formed sound. The boy, he might not just be Dad's son. I stared at him, utterly lost. What do you mean? Daniel swallowed. His next words came out like broken glass. He might be my brother. My vision blurred. My legs gave out. The room spun into darkness, and the truth, the entire truth, finally exploded. The confrontation wasn't over. The fallout hadn't even begun, and karma hadn't arrived yet, but it was coming. Oh, it was coming soon. When Daniel said those words, he might be my brother, the world didn't just tilt, it cracked. Something inside me broke so violently. I didn't feel the pain at first, just shock, then numbness, then a coldness spreading through my veins like winter was blooming inside my chest. I didn't faint, though I felt close. Instead, I sank slowly onto the kitchen floor, my breath shallow, my heart pounding in an uneven, frightening rhythm. It felt like the truth was too big for the room, too heavy for my lungs, too cruel for my life. I pressed a hand to my chest, whispering, Your brother? Daniel, what do you mean? He knelt in front of me immediately, tears running down his cheeks, his hands trembling so violently they barely held mine. Mom, I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to tell you. He swallowed hard. But the boy, he's not just a rumor. I've seen him. My breath hitched painfully. You've seen him? Daniel nodded. And Mom, when I looked at him, it was like looking at Dad. It was undeniable. My stomach twisted sharply. And something else, Daniel continued softly. A DNA test was done. A sound escaped my throat, half gasp, half cry. Emily stepped forward, arms crossed tightly, voice flat. The test wasn't fully conclusive because your husband is gone, but the probability is high, very high. Daniel whispered, Mom, the boy is my half-brother. Half-brother, my husband's son, a child born from betrayal, a child I never knew existed, a child who grew up alone, while I spent years mourning a man who had lied to me. I felt a sharp, twisting pain in my chest, heartbreak mixed with humiliation, grief mixed with disbelief. I whispered, all those years, all those nights, he let me love him, trust him, while I couldn't finish. Daniel held my shoulders. Mom, please listen. Dad made mistakes, awful mistakes, but I know he loved you. Loved me, while giving another woman a child. The words felt like ashes inside me. I looked at Daniel, at the boy I had raised with my whole heart, and whispered, and you kept all this from me for a year. He broke again. I'm sorry. I didn't want to break you. I didn't want you to think your whole marriage was a lie. But that's exactly how it felt, like the last 30 years of my life had collapsed in seconds. Like every memory, every anniversary, every smile, every quiet night had been rewritten, like I didn't know my own husband, like I didn't know my own family, like I didn't even know myself. Then another wave of truth hit me. And the money, I whispered. Daniel nodded, ashamed. I've been supporting them, Mom. The boy is sick, and I couldn't let him die. Emily's voice hardened. And while he was giving thousands to them, your savings were slowly disappearing. I froze. My savings? Daniel's head dropped. Mom, I needed extra money, and I know it was wrong. I took from the joint account without telling you. I felt like someone punched me in the chest. How much? I whispered. He hesitated, and that hesitation was the answer. Emily snapped. Enough that we can't keep living like this. Enough that I had to choose between our future and your mother's presence here. Daniel glared at her. Stop it. This isn't about money. But Emily didn't stop. She stepped closer to me, eyes cold. I didn't want her gone because I hate her. She pointed at me. I wanted her gone because your guilt was destroying everything. You couldn't make decisions. You couldn't protect us. You were drowning and dragging us with you. Daniel shouted, That's not true. But she wasn't done. And do you know why? Because he couldn't bear to hurt you. Because every time he looked at you, he felt ashamed. Her voice dropped, sharp as a knife. So yes, you were the obstacle. And until you left this house, Daniel would never deal with the situation. The words slammed into me. I whispered, So, you wanted me gone so he could take responsibility for the child? For the other woman? Emily held my gaze. I wanted you gone so the truth could move forward. Your presence froze everything. My presence. The presence of a mother, a woman who built this house with her bare hands, a woman who survived widowhood, a woman who raised Daniel alone. I suddenly felt small, so unbearably small. But then Daniel's voice cracked through the moment. Emily, enough. You're not helping. He turned to me, eyes swollen. Mom, I swear, I never meant for you to feel replaced. I never meant for Emily to talk to you like that. I was trying to handle everything alone because I didn't want you to suffer. I whispered, but I'm suffering now, worse than if you had told me a year ago. Daniel covered his face, breaking down. I know. I'm so sorry. Then the tension shifted. Emily's expression changed, not softer but uncertain. She whispered, There's one more thing. Daniel whipped toward her. Emily, no! But she raised a hand. She deserves the full truth. My body went cold again. She hesitated, then said slowly, The package, the one I grabbed that day. I nodded carefully, heart pounding. It wasn't medicine. It wasn't documents. She swallowed hard. It was a letter. A letter? I whispered. Emily nodded. A letter written by the woman, the boy's mother. My breath caught. And inside it, Emily continued, was something she didn't want Daniel to see. Not at that moment. Daniel shut his eyes. She was asking for more money, Emily said quietly, but not for medical treatment. My heart thudded painfully. For what then? Emily hesitated. Then she said it. She wants Daniel to meet the boy. The room went silent. So silent I could hear the clock ticking behind me. So silent I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Daniel whispered, barely audible, She wants me to be his brother. And suddenly I understood everything. Emily's hostility, Daniel's guilt, the secrecy, the fear, the panic, the money, the lies, everything. My son was being pulled into two lives, and I, the mother who had always protected him, had become the emotional chain that tied him to his guilt. I felt myself break, truly break. I whispered, voice shaking, "What are you going to do?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't know, and that terrified me more than anything. The consequences had begun. The collapse was underway. But karma was only just stretching its wings. And what happened next would change everything. For a long minute, none of us spoke. Daniel stood in the middle of the kitchen, shoulders shaking, breathing unevenly, a grown man who suddenly looked like a frightened little boy. Emily stood stiff at the edge of the counter, arms crossed tightly, eyes darting between us, equal parts defensive and strangely worried. And I stood there, holding onto the back of a chair, my chest rising and falling in irregular waves. It felt like the truth had taken on a physical form, heavy, suffocating, pressing down on all three of us. Finally, I managed to whisper, "Emily, why didn't you show Daniel the letter? Why did you hide it?" Her lips tightened. She looked away. Daniel turned to her sharply. "You hid a letter from me?" Emily exhaled, exasperated. "Daniel, you were a mess. You weren't thinking clearly. You kept giving money, saying yes to everything, letting guilt run your life. You weren't protecting us, and you weren't protecting yourself." "But hiding it," he hissed. "That wasn't your decision to make." Emily lifted her chin, her voice suddenly sharp, almost trembling. "If I didn't step in, she would control you completely. You don't see it. You think she's this helpless woman with a sick child, but she's manipulating you. She's using your guilt to drain you." Daniel recoiled. "Emily, stop." But she didn't. She took a step forward, eyes blazing. "You think she contacted you out of love? Out of desperation? No. She contacted you because you're the only one left from your father's side. You're the wallet. You're the solution to every problem she has." Her voice dropped, quivering. "And every time she pulls you in, I lose you." Piece by piece, Daniel froze, and suddenly I understood something I hadn't seen before. Emily wasn't just angry. She was terrified of losing her husband, terrified that Daniel's guilt would swallow their marriage, terrified that I, unintentionally, had become the barrier in the middle of everything. Her voice cracked. "I can't compete with a ghost, Daniel. I can't fight a dead man's sins. And I can't watch you crumble under something that wasn't your fault." Daniel opened his mouth, but she held up her hand. "And yes, your mother made it worse." My breath caught. She turned to me, her voice quieter, hesitant. "When you're here, Daniel thinks he has to protect you. He thinks telling you will destroy you. Every time he looks at you, he panics." Her eyes softened slightly. Not much, but enough to show this wasn't hatred. "It wasn't that I wanted you gone because I hate you. I wanted you gone because, while you're here, Daniel won't face the truth. Not with you watching, not with you hurting." A tear slipped down her cheek. "And I'm sorry, but I was drowning too." For the first time, I saw the human side of her, the woman behind the coldness, the wife behind the defensive tone, the person behind the sharp words. Emily wasn't my enemy. She wasn't cruel by nature. She was desperate, and in her desperation she had turned cold, controlled, sharp, even manipulative, but not out of malice, out of fear of losing her husband, fear of living in the shadow of his father's betrayal, fear of being buried under a truth she never asked for. I took a shaky breath. "Emily, why didn't you just talk to me?" She wiped her cheek quickly, as if embarrassed by the tear. "Because I didn't think you would listen. Not to me, not coming from me. You loved Daniel so much, you would have defended him no matter what. And I was scared you'd blame me." Daniel stepped toward her, softer. I would never blame you. Emily shook her head, voice trembling. You already did, Daniel. Every time I brought up boundaries, or money, or the boy, you said I was heartless. Daniel looked down. Emily whispered, I'm not heartless. I'm just human. Her voice cracked into a whisper, and I'm scared. Those words hit me deeper than I expected. She wasn't an enemy. She was another woman suffering from the consequences of a man's choices, a man who wasn't even alive anymore. The pain he caused was carving through generation after generation, through the woman he betrayed, through me, through my son, through a sick boy, through Emily. His choices had grown roots, dark ones, and now they were strangling all of us. Suddenly Daniel whispered, Mom, what do you want me to do? The question froze me. What did I want? Did I want him to cut ties? Did I want him to ignore the boy? Did I want him to choose me? Did I want to pretend none of this happened? Every answer felt wrong. Every path felt like it led to more pain. I took a long breath, a breath that trembled in my chest. Daniel, I don't want you to abandon that boy. His eyes widened, shocked. Emily looked at me as if she hadn't expected those words either. I continued, voice shaking. He didn't choose this. He didn't choose his mother's pain. He didn't choose my husband's betrayal. And he certainly doesn't deserve to suffer because adults made mistakes. A tear slipped down Daniel's cheek. I placed a hand on his chest. He's your brother. Whether you accept him or not, that truth won't change. Emily whispered, So you want him to support them forever? I shook my head slowly. No, I want him to support the boy, not the mother. Emily blinked. Daniel swallowed hard. Then I added softly, and I want him to face the situation, fully, honestly, without hiding anything from you, or from me. Daniel closed his eyes. Relief, deep, overwhelming relief, washed over his face. And Emily, I saw her shoulders drop, just a little, as if the weight on her chest loosened for the first time in months. But then, something else happened. Something unexpected, something quiet, something like karma. Because Emily suddenly said, There's something else the boy's mother doesn't know yet. I frowned. Daniel looked up sharply. Emily inhaled deeply, then whispered, She thinks Daniel kept everything from you, but the truth is, she doesn't know I hid the letter. Daniel's eyes widened. You, Emily, no. But she lifted her chin. I'm going to tell her. My heart jolted. Tell her what? I asked carefully. That I intercepted her letter, that I interfered, that I kept Daniel from seeing her request. Daniel's face drained of color. Emily, that will destroy everything. She nodded slowly. I know. And then she said something I didn't expect, something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. But maybe it's time for all the lies to collapse. Hers, yours, mine. She took a breath. And maybe karma needs to start with me. It was the first time I saw true accountability in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, not defense. Accountability. And in that moment, something shifted inside the house. A tension broke. A truth surfaced. And karma, the kind that doesn't punish but corrects, finally took its first step. But it wasn't done, not even close, because the next day, when we met the boy's mother face to face, everything changed. Again. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the tiny, fragile sounds of the house, the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, Daniel shifting in his room, Emily crying quietly behind their closed door. It felt like the whole house was breathing in pain. Everything had changed. Every truth had surfaced. Every wound was exposed. And yet, One final step remained. We had to face her, the woman from my husband's past, the mother of the sick boy, the person who had unknowingly blown apart my entire world. By sunrise, my mind was exhausted, but strangely clear. This meeting needed to happen, not for anger, not for revenge, not for punishment, but for closure, for truth, for healing, even if it hurt first. Emily was the first to speak that morning. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, but her voice didn't shake. "I'll call her," she said. "I'll tell her we need to talk, today." Daniel looked at her with concern. "Em, you don't have to—" "Yes." She cut him off firmly. "I do. I need to take responsibility." For the first time since everything started, I saw strength in Emily. Not aggression, not defensiveness, but a quiet, painful strength that comes from facing the consequences of your own actions. Daniel looked at me. I nodded. "We go together," I said softly, even though my hands trembled under the table. "We face it together." The woman's address was a 45-minute drive away, in a quiet, worn-down neighborhood where every house seemed tired, like life had pressed too hard on it. When we pulled up in front of her small, aging home, I felt my heartbeat in my throat. My palms were sweating. My breath uneven. I wasn't prepared. No amount of time, no amount of truth, no amount of tears could have truly prepared me for this moment. Daniel stepped forward to knock, but his hand hesitated midair. He turned to me. "Mom, we can go back if this is too much." I shook my head, not because I was brave, but because I was tired of running from pain. "I need to see her," I whispered. "For all of us." He nodded and knocked. The door opened slowly, and there she was, the woman, not glamorous, not threatening, not the enemy my fears had created. She looked small, fragile, worn down by life. Her eyes carried shadows, not from malice, but from exhaustion, heartbreak, and years of carrying burdens alone. When her gaze fell on Daniel, tension flickered across her face. She clutched the door frame lightly, as if she needed support. "Daniel," she whispered, "I didn't expect you to come." He swallowed. "I needed to talk to you. We all did." Her eyes moved to Emily, then finally to me, and when she saw me, she froze. Her lips parted. Her face went pale. Her eyes widened in shock and guilt. "You must be," she breathed, "his wife." My knees almost buckled, but I stood still, holding onto the railing. "Yes," I said softly, "I am." Silence, a long, painful silence that wrapped around all of us. Her eyes filled with tears almost instantly, and she stepped back, shaking her head. No, I never wanted this. I never wanted to face you. I told Daniel not to involve you. I raised a hand gently. "Let us come in." She hesitated, then nodded and opened the door wider. Inside, her home felt quiet and sad. The kind of sadness that doesn't come from mess or chaos, but from years of scraping by, of holding on, of surviving. On the wall, I noticed a few drawings, children's drawings. My heart clenched painfully. "Where is he?" I whispered. She looked at the floor. "At the hospital. He had a checkup today." Her voice cracked. "He's been getting worse." The room spun for a second. I held onto the back of a chair. Daniel stepped forward, voice gentle. "We came to talk, honestly this time." She swallowed hard, trembling. "I know Emily hates me." Emily flinched, the first real sign of vulnerability I had seen in her since the beginning. The woman looked at me next. "And I know you must hate me most." My throat tightened. I shook my head slowly. "Hate doesn't fix anything," I whispered. "And I've already been hurting more than I ever thought possible." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I never wanted to destroy your family. I never wanted to break your heart. I swear, I didn't contact Daniel for money. I contacted him because—" She paused. Her shoulders shook. "Because I'm a mother too, and I was desperate. My son was slipping away from me, and I couldn't let him die without knowing where he came from." Her voice cracked open. "I wanted him to know he wasn't a mistake." My own heart broke again, not from betrayal, not from anger, but from understanding. She wiped her tears with shaking fingers. "I never told him anything about your husband. I never poisoned him with stories. I just told him his father was gone, that he wasn't here, that life is complicated." She looked at Daniel. "I never asked for more than help for his medical care. I never wanted to take Daniel away from you or ruin his marriage." Emily stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "You should have let Daniel decide." The woman nodded weakly. "I know. I'm sorry. Truly." Emily took a shaky breath. "And I'm sorry I hid your letter." Daniel's head jerked toward her, shocked that she admitted it so easily. The woman looked confused. "You hid it?" Emily nodded slowly, guilt carving deep lines across her face. "I did, because I was afraid, because I felt threatened, because I thought you were trying to take Daniel from me." A pause. "Because I was selfish." The woman blinked, surprised. Then, unexpectedly, she nodded. "I understand. If I were you, I might have done the same." Emily's mouth parted, surprised by the kindness. Then the woman turned toward me. "And you, what do you want?" My voice trembled. "I want the boy to live," I whispered. "I want Daniel to have peace, and I want honesty. No more secrets, no more lies, no more ghosts from the past haunting us." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I can do that." Then she added softly, "I don't want anything from Daniel anymore. Not money, not support, not involvement." Daniel stiffened. "What? Why?" She looked at all three of us, then smiled a sad, broken smile. "Because karma has already come for me." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" I whispered. She swallowed. "My son asked me last week, 'Why doesn't my dad want to see me?' And I didn't know what to say anymore." Her tears fell harder. "So I told him the truth." I held my breath. She whispered, "I told him he may never meet his father's family, that he might never meet his brother, and that it wasn't his fault." Then she looked straight into my eyes, and that child cried in my arms, saying he must have done something wrong. A knife twisted in my heart. "That," she whispered, "is karma." Silence filled the room. Not angry silence, not bitter silence, but heavy, aching, human silence. Finally, she added, "I won't take anything more from you. Not your time, not your peace, not your family. I'm letting go." And just like that, a woman I had feared, hated, imagined as the villain, stood in front of me with nothing but heartbreak and surrender. And in that moment, karma didn't feel like punishment. It felt like truth, painful, raw, but real, the kind of truth that forces healing to begin. Even for me, even for her, even for the boy. But the story wasn't over, because what happened that evening when Daniel got a phone call from the hospital was the moment karma took its final step, and it changed everything, again. When we left her house that afternoon, the sky was already turning a faint orange, the kind of sunset that looks soft, but carries something heavy beneath it, like a warning, like a quiet whisper from the universe saying, "Brace yourself." None of us spoke on the drive home. Daniel stared out the window, jaw clenched, lost in a storm of emotions. Emily sat stiffly, hands intertwined so tightly her knuckles turned white, and I sat in the back, feeling like my soul was somewhere outside of my body. The meeting had shaken me, not because of anger, but because of something far more painful, understanding her pain, understanding the boy's confusion, understanding the ripple effect of choices made decades ago, understanding my own blind spots, and that understanding hurt. When we reached home, the silence followed us inside like a shadow. Daniel placed the car keys on the kitchen counter, exhaling slowly. Emily walked straight to the bedroom, locking the door behind her, the click echoing like a fragile boundary. And I sat alone on the couch, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of a life that no longer felt like mine. It was almost evening when the phone rang, a sharp, sudden sound that cut through the silence like a blade. Daniel walked into the living room, glancing down at his phone. The color drained from his face. "Mom," his voice broke. "It's the hospital." My heart stopped. Every nerve in my body tightened. He answered the call with shaking hands. "Hello? Yes, this is Daniel." He paused, and in that pause, I felt my entire world hovering above a cliff. Then suddenly, his face twisted in horror. "What? When? How?" My blood ran cold. I stood from the couch, gripping the armrest to steady myself. Daniel's breath grew ragged as he listened, his free hand covering his face. Emily rushed out of the bedroom, alarmed. "Daniel, what is it?" He finally whispered, voice breaking apart like shattered glass. "It's him, the boy. He collapsed." My breath hitched painfully. "Collapsed?" "That's not all," Daniel whispered, shaking so hard his phone nearly fell. "They're asking for immediate family to come because," his voice cracked violently, throat tightening, "because they're not sure he's going to make it through the night." Emily gasped, covering her mouth. And me? My vision blurred, my knees buckled, my heart clenched with a kind of fear I hadn't felt in years, a fear so primal, so instinctual, so devastatingly human. Not for myself, not for my pride, not for the betrayal, but for a child I had never met, a child who carried the blood of the man I once loved, a child who suffered because of decisions that were never his, a child who might die without ever knowing the truth, without ever receiving forgiveness, without ever feeling fully acknowledged, without ever being embraced by the family fate had tied him to. I whispered, trembling, "Daniel, we have to go." He nodded numbly, eyes red. Emily looked torn, fear and confusion battling inside her. But finally she said quietly, "I'm coming too." We left without another word. The hospital was cold, unforgiving, full of sterile lights that made everything feel more real, more brutal. When we arrived, the boy's mother was sitting in the waiting area. But she wasn't sitting upright. She was collapsed on a chair, face buried in her hands, sobbing so violently her whole body shook. I felt my chest tighten. Daniel rushed to her. "What happened?" he whispered. She lifted her face, and in her eyes was a kind of terror only a mother could understand. "He fainted at school," she choked out. "His heart, it just gave out." She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for breath. "They rushed him here. They tried everything. But now he's in the ICU. He hasn't woken up." Daniel knelt beside her, tears streaming. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm here now." But her next words froze us all. They asked for a family member to sign the consent form for emergency surgery. She shook her head helplessly. "But I can't sign it alone anymore. They said with his condition, they need," she broke down again. "They need his father's side. They need a blood relative, someone who can consent in case something goes wrong." Her voice shattered. "And I'm afraid that if we wait too long, I'm going to lose my son." The entire hallway seemed to freeze. Daniel's breath caught. Emily covered her trembling lips. And I felt something inside me break open in a way I never expected. Because in that moment, the betrayal, the secrets, the lies, the humiliation, none of it mattered anymore. There was only one truth left. A child was fighting for his life. A child who had been abandoned by the man who created him. A child who needed help. Now, my voice came out soft, but firm. What do we need to do? Daniel looked at me, eyes wide with disbelief. Mom, are you sure? I nodded slowly. He is innocent, I whispered. He is suffering for sins he never committed. A tear rolled down my cheek, and I will not let another child pay for the mistakes of the adults. Daniel broke, completely. He grabbed my hand and pressed his forehead to it, crying like he was 6 years old again. Emily stared at me, stunned, then looked away, wiping her eyes. The boy's mother sobbed harder, whispering, "Thank you, thank you." A nurse rushed toward us. "Are you the family of the patient in ICU 304? Daniel nodded, voice cracking. Yes, we are." The nurse looked at him urgently. "We need consent now." "The doctor is waiting." Daniel stood slowly, trembling. The nurse handed him a clipboard. "Sign here." His hand shook violently as he held the pen. Emily grabbed his wrist gently, steadying him. And for a moment, just a moment, our broken family stood together, not as the betrayed, not as the guilty, not as the angry, not as the ones who hid secrets, but as human beings, as people trying to save a child who, without knowing it, had already changed all of our lives. Daniel signed. The nurse grabbed the paper and ran, and as she disappeared behind the ICU doors, I whispered a prayer I didn't know I still had in me. Please, let him live. Let this child live. But what happened next, when the doctor finally came out of the operating room, was something none of us were prepared to hear, something that would push our family into the final collapse and the ultimate turning point. The seconds after Daniel signed the consent form felt unreal, like time had slowed, thickened, stretched into something too heavy to carry. A nurse rushed the paper into the operating room. The ICU doors slammed shut behind her, and suddenly the hallway became a place where breathing felt difficult. The boy's mother sank into a plastic chair, hands shaking uncontrollably. Daniel stood frozen, staring at the double doors as if he could see through them. Emily paced silently, whispering something under her breath, a prayer perhaps, or a silent argument with herself. And I stood still, my palms cold, my heartbeat uneven, my mind a blur of thoughts that didn't connect, like broken threads of a life torn open. I whispered to myself, please, let him survive. Let this boy have a chance. Not because of my husband, not because of Daniel, not even because of karma, but because no child deserves to suffer for a story they never asked to be a part of. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. Every second felt like a thin needle pushing deeper beneath my skin. At one point, Daniel whispered, Mom, what if I'm too late? His voice cracked. What if I should have helped sooner? What if I let him down? I touched his shoulder gently. You didn't know, I whispered. You were trying to do what you thought was right. Emily stood behind him, her eyes softening, truly softening, for the first time. She placed her hand on his back. You're here now. That's what matters. He nodded, but guilt still soaked through him like rain through thin cloth. Across from us, the boy's mother sat curled into herself, whispering her son's name under her breath over and over, as if calling him back to life. It broke something in me. This woman, the one I had feared, resented, imagined as a threat, was just like me. A mother, a terrified, helpless mother trying to hold her child's life together. And in that moment, I no longer saw betrayal. I saw shared grief. At exactly 9:47 p.m., the ICU doors opened. A doctor stepped out. His face, I will never forget that face. Too calm, too heavy, too solemn, not the face of relief. My breath caught in my throat. The boy's mother stumbled to her feet. Daniel took one shaky step toward the doctor. Emily gripped Daniel's arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. The doctor removed his cap, and in that small gesture, I felt something collapse inside me. He spoke quietly. The surgery was extremely difficult. The woman gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Daniel whispered, Did he make it? The doctor looked at him, at Emily, at me, then finally, at the boy's mother. His voice lowered. We did everything we could. A pause, but his heart was too weak. The mother's knees gave out. Daniel caught her as she screamed, a scream that tore through the sterile hallway, a scream no mother should ever have to release. Emily covered her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. Her whole body shook. I felt my chest rip open, physically, painfully, as tears spilled down my face. The doctor continued, soft but merciless. His heart stopped at 9:32. We tried resuscitation for 20 minutes. He didn't respond. The boy's mother sobbed into her hands, body shaking violently. Daniel whispered, No, 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 over and over, like a prayer unraveling. Emily leaned against the wall, sliding down as she cried, Oh God, oh God. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. My legs trembled so hard I had to hold onto the chair beside me. The doctor finished quietly. I'm truly, deeply sorry. Then he walked away, leaving behind a silence so devastating it crushed the air around us. For a long time, none of us moved. The mother cried until her voice broke completely. Daniel held her, crying harder than I had seen since he was a child. Emily curled into herself, whispering apologies to no one and everyone. And me? I stood frozen, my heart torn between grief and guilt and something darker, something I didn't want to admit even to myself. If Daniel had supported the boy sooner, if Emily hadn't hidden the letter, if the truth hadn't been delayed, if my husband had been honest during his life, if I hadn't been kept in the dark, would this boy still be alive? The thought stabbed me so deeply I had to sit down, covering my face with both hands. I whispered through tears, Why does a child have to pay for the sins of an adult? No one answered, because there was no answer. When we were finally allowed to see the boy, I wasn't ready, but Daniel insisted, Mom, please, he deserves to be seen. He was right. So I walked into the cold, quiet ICU room. The child lay there, tiny, pale, so much smaller than I expected. His eyelashes were long, his fingers curled softly, his face peaceful in the cruel way stillness can be peaceful. A child who looked so much like my husband, and also so much like Daniel that my knees nearly buckled. Daniel brushed a trembling hand over the boy's small arm. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. Emily cried silently beside him. The mother stood at the foot of the bed, holding the boy's shoes to her chest, her face twisted in agony. I stepped closer, my hand trembling as I touched the side of the bed, and in a broken whisper I said, I should have known. I should have seen the signs. I should have forgiven sooner. A tear fell onto the sheet. Little one, I'm sorry the world failed you. And in that moment, the deepest, rawest moment of my life, I realized something. Karma had not punished him. Karma had punished us, all of us, not out of cruelty, but out of truth. Because lies have consequences, secrets have consequences, Running from pain has consequences, and the price had been paid by the only innocent person in the entire story, a child. When we walked out of the hospital, the night air felt colder, sharper, quieter. Daniel walked ahead, shoulders slumped, his grief so heavy it seemed to bend him. Emily walked beside him, touching his back gently, whispering through tears, "We'll get through this. We have to get through this." The boy's mother stayed behind because she had one last moment alone with her son. And I stood outside the hospital doors and whispered to the sky, "Let this pain mean something." Because if it didn't, then the boy's death would become another shadow in a long chain of secrets, and I could not bear that. But the story wasn't over. Because what happened the next morning, when the mother came to our house, eyes red, hands trembling, changed the direction of all our lives, forever. The morning after the boy passed, the house felt different. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, like grief had seeped into the walls, the floor, the furniture. Every corner soaked in the memory of a child none of us had truly known, yet all of us had lost. Daniel barely slept. Emily's eyes were swollen, and I moved through the house like a ghost, touching the things I used to love, the teapot, the window frame, the little rug by the stairs, as if seeing them for the first time, and for the last, because in my heart, some piece of me felt like it had died too. We were sitting quietly at the kitchen table, untouched cups of tea in front of us, when a soft knock broke the stillness. 3 gentle taps, not urgent, not hesitant, just sad. Daniel lifted his head. Emily froze mid-breath. I felt my chest tighten. He walked slowly to the door, and when he opened it, the boy's mother stood there, her eyes red, her hair uncombed, her hands shaking around a small plastic bag she held close to her body. She looked smaller than she had at the hospital, more fragile. "May I come in?" she whispered. Daniel nodded silently and stepped aside. She walked into the living room, clutching the bag like it contained her last breath. When she looked at me, her face crumpled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I shook my head slowly. "You have nothing to apologize for." But she hugged the bag tighter, tears threatening to spill. "No, I dragged you into this. I dragged your son into this. I brought pain to your home because I thought I was doing the right thing." Her voice broke. I was wrong. Emily stepped forward, voice gentle for the first time. "You were a mother doing what any mother would do." The woman shook her head hard. "No, a mother protects her child, and yet I let mine suffer with questions I should have answered years ago." Her chest rose and fell unevenly, and now it's too late. She placed a trembling hand over her heart. "I will carry that guilt until the day I die." The room fell silent. Daniel's lip quivered, but he held it together. I stepped closer to her. "Your son knew love," I whispered. "That is more than many children have." She looked away, tears falling. Then she held out the plastic bag. "This is the last thing he made." My breath hitched. She opened the bag slowly and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a drawing, crayon lines, simple colors, childlike shapes. But the moment I saw it, I froze. Because the drawing showed 3 figures, a boy, a tall man, a shorter woman, and above them, written in uneven letters, "My family." The woman sobbed. "He drew it 3 days ago. He told me he wanted to meet his brother. He said he wanted a real family picture someday." My knees weakened. Daniel covered his mouth, tears spilling. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, shaking silently. And I I felt my soul tear open because the boy had died wanting the one thing he could never have, a family that never abandoned him. The mother looked at Daniel. I came here because I want to release you. Daniel blinked. Release me? She nodded gently, painfully. You don't owe me anything anymore. You don't owe him anything. His suffering is over. He's not in pain anymore, and I will never ask you for another cent, another visit, another word. She took a shaky breath. You are free. Daniel looked like the words stabbed him. I don't want to be free, he whispered. I wanted to help him. She reached out and touched his arm. I know, and he knew. He knew you cared. That was enough. Daniel cried openly now, shoulders shaking. Emily touched his back gently. I stepped toward the woman and whispered, What will you do now? She smiled through her tears. A mother keeps going, even when she doesn't know how. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, Can I ask you one last favor? I nodded slowly. What is it? She held out the drawing again. I want you to have this. I shook my head immediately. No, I can't. This is your son's. She stepped closer and pressed the drawing into my hands. He liked to draw hearts because he said they were strong, even when they broke, her voice trembling. And he made this after hearing your name. I froze. My name? She nodded. He asked me if his father's wife was kind. I told him I believed she was, and he smiled. My breath caught. He said, I hope she's nice. I want her to be happy. My hand flew to my mouth. He said, she continued, maybe she can be my family too. The room spun. My vision blurred. My chest ached with a pain so deep I didn't have words for it. The boy, the child I had feared knowing, had wished for my happiness, my acceptance, my love, and I had never even met him. I sobbed silently, clutching the drawing. The woman wiped her tears. I want you to keep it, she whispered, because in his heart, you were part of his family too. We cried together, 3 women bound by pain from the same man's choices, 3 lives tangled by secrets we never asked for, 3 mothers, one who lost a child, one who raised a child alone, and one struggling to keep her marriage together. And in that moment, there was no blame, no anger, no sides, just grief, just humanity, just truth. Before leaving, she kissed the drawing, pressed it into my hands, and whispered, Thank you for letting my son exist in your heart. Then she left. And as the door closed behind her, I realized something. This was karma, not punishment, not revenge, but truth catching up with all of us. And truth, once revealed, demands one thing, forgiveness, not for others, but for yourself. That night, I sat alone in my room, holding the drawing to my chest. I whispered to the boy I never met, I'm sorry. I hope you find peace, and I hope one day I learn to forgive the man who created so much pain. My husband was gone. His mistakes remained. But the child he left behind, the child who suffered the most, had given me the final gift, clarity. And because of him, I found the courage to make a decision that would change the entire course of my life. A decision I would share with Daniel and Emily the next morning. A decision that would become the true ending of this story. The night after she left, I didn't move from my room. I sat at the edge of the bed, holding the child's drawing against my chest, feeling the weight of what it meant. For him, for Daniel, for Emily, and for me. The house was quiet, so quiet that every sound, even my own breathing, echoed like it belonged to someone else. For years, I thought I understood pain. I thought losing my husband had broken me. I thought raising Daniel alone had hardened and softened me at the same time. But this This pain was different. This pain was truth, raw, honest, unforgiving truth, the kind you cannot escape, the kind that changes you, and it made me realize something. If I stayed in this house, living with old wounds, I would suffocate, and Daniel would keep drowning in guilt, and Emily would keep fighting ghosts. The boy's death, his drawing, his final wish. It opened my eyes. It didn't matter who was right, who was wrong, who hid what, who betrayed whom. What mattered was this: the cycle had to end with me, not continue through Daniel, not haunt Emily, not poison another generation. So, I made a decision I needed to face by morning. When the first rays of sunlight touched the curtains, I stood up, held the drawing one last time, placed it gently into an envelope, then walked out of my room. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee he hadn't touched. Emily sat beside him, head down, twisting her fingers nervously. Both of them looked like they hadn't slept either. When they saw me, they stood up. "Mom," Daniel whispered. His voice sounded like a child's again, fragile, frightened, hoping for comfort. I walked toward them slowly. "Sit," I said gently. They did. I didn't sit immediately. I stood in front of them, letting the silence settle, not cold, not harsh, but meaningful. Then finally, I spoke. "Last night, I thought about everything." Daniel lowered his eyes. Emily stiffened. I continued. "I thought about your father, about the lies, about the truth he never gave me, about the boy, about what he needed and what he lost." My voice trembled. "And I thought about us, about our family." Daniel looked up with wet eyes. "Mom, I'll do whatever you want. If you want me to cut ties, if you want me to..." I shook my head gently. "No, I'm not here to punish you." Emily blinked, surprised. I turned to her. "And I'm not here to punish you either." Emily swallowed hard. "Mom, I said terrible things." "You were scared," I said softly. "You acted out of fear. Fear for your marriage, fear for your husband, fear of the past coming back to destroy your future." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was wrong." "Yes," I nodded, "and so was Daniel." He wiped his cheeks. "I should have told you. I know I should have." "You should have," I agreed. "But I also understand why you didn't." His face twisted in guilt. "You wanted to protect me, and in doing so, you hurt me." Daniel's shoulders fell. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I nodded slowly. "I forgive you." The words came out unexpectedly soft, but they were true. Daniel cried silently. Emily bowed her head, hands covering her face. I continued, "But forgiveness isn't the end of this. It's only the beginning." I finally sat down. And then I said the words I had rehearsed all night. "I'm leaving." Both of them jerked their heads up instantly. "What?" Daniel stammered. Emily's eyes widened. "Mom, no." I lifted a hand gently. "I'm not leaving because I'm angry. I'm not leaving because I can't forgive you. I'm leaving because this house is full of wounds." Daniel shook his head, panicking. "No, Mom, this is your home." "Daniel," I whispered. "No, listen to me." He froze. "This house needs time to heal. You and Emily, you need to grow together without guilt weighing you down, without feeling responsible for my feelings, without hiding things from me." I turned to Emily. "You need space to be a wife, not a referee, not a soldier fighting a battle that isn't yours." Emily cried harder. I placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You deserve a fresh start. Your marriage deserves a chance to rebuild, not on secrets, not on fear, but on truth." Then I turned back to Daniel. "And you need to forgive yourself." His voice cracked. "How can I forgive myself when a child is dead?" I reached out and cupped his face with both hands. the same way I did when he was a boy. By living, I whispered, by being good, by building a life that honors what he never got to have. No child wants the people he loved to drown in sadness after he's gone. Daniel broke again, leaning his forehead into my palms. Mom, please don't leave. I'm not leaving you, I whispered. I'm leaving the pain. Emily wiped her eyes. Where will you go? I smiled gently. To a small apartment near the temple, a quiet place where I can breathe, where I can pray for that boy. For you two, for myself. Daniel shook his head desperately. We can fix this together. Yes, I said, we can, and we will, but not by living under the same roof right now. I placed the envelope with the drawing on the table. This stays here because this home needs his memory, not as guilt, but as a reminder to live honestly. Daniel touched the envelope with trembling fingers. Emily whispered, Will you come back someday? I smiled softly, painfully, when the wound stopped bleeding. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't the old heavy silence. It was a new silence, the silence of truth finally spoken, the silence of broken hearts slowly starting to mend, the silence of a new beginning. I stood up. Daniel grabbed my hand. Emily held the other. We stayed like that, the three of us, linked by pain, bound by love, connected by a story we never wanted, for a long, long time. When I finally walked out the door with my small suitcase, I looked back only once, not with sadness, but with gratitude, because this wasn't the end, not of our family, not of love, not of healing. It was the beginning of something new, something honest, something earned, something real. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I whispered a promise to myself, to the child, to the past I was leaving behind. I will live, and I will forgive, and I will not let the sins of yesterday define tomorrow. If you're still here, if you've listened to every twist, every confession, every heartbreak of my story, then I want to tell you something directly. Come closer. Listen as if we're sitting together at a quiet table, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, sharing breaths, sharing silence, sharing life. Because what I'm about to say is not just the ending of a story. It's the truth I learned after losing a piece of myself and finding another piece I didn't know I needed. Life doesn't break us all at once. It breaks us slowly, through the people we love, through the truths we avoid, through the past we never asked for, but must somehow carry. But here's what I learned. Pain doesn't end you. It reveals you. It shows you what you're capable of. It shows you who you can become. It shows you the strength you never thought you had, the strength that only appears after you've been brought to your knees. I once believed that love meant holding on, staying, sacrificing, enduring. But sometimes love means stepping away, letting go, allowing others to face the truth without leaning on you, letting yourself breathe in a way you haven't in years. And sometimes forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. It's for the version of yourself that was trapped in that pain for too long. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever held a truth that broke you, if you've ever cried quietly in the dark because you didn't want anyone to see, I want you to hear me. You're not weak. You're human, and you're not alone. Maybe your story doesn't look like mine. Maybe your wounds came from different names, different faces, a different time. But pain speaks the same language in every heart. And healing begins the moment you whisper to yourself, I deserve peace too. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me share my heart. And if you've ever gone through something like this, you are not alone.